Hello and welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the Mokota Man at YouTube with another modelling video. Today we'll be looking at the HGUC Dra-C. This is a build, a part of the 28-day group builds by gundamforum.com.au, sponsored by Hobbyco and Bandai, administrated and judged by the Ghost of Zeon. This kit is the same standard as any HGUC, probably a little too much seam lines, 2,000 yen, and a whopping 8 runners, 1 clear piece and stickers for a kit that supposedly doesn't have a lot of parts. It is from the anime 0083, and it is a mobile suit that I'm a fan of, especially that its backstory involves it being built from scratch parts, including a zauk 2, F2 and spaceship bits. Getting straight into the construction, the torso does resemble a F2, but does not use the same pieces. There's less pieces and some very prominent seam lines throughout the kit. The balls on top of the shoulders in the line art presented, I decided to carve them out to look like panel lines and not fill them with putty. All the other seam lines throughout the kit were filled with squadron putty. A warning, the very large leg fuel tanks do have a tendency of splitting, and I've heard this story from other models. I ran super glue down them to give them extra strength, and they have not split since. Besides that, I found it to be a very enjoyable kit, a very nice looking kit. My biggest problem is its proportions. I feel it doesn't reflect what is shown out there. I think the fuel tank should be a lot bigger, body smaller, keeping the zauk proportions in check, of course. And besides the extra work around the nubs and seam lines, a lot of work invested in this can produce a very interesting and fun kit. The articulation and joints in the arms and hands are perfect. Thruster bells, the belt around the waist, and the accessory guns and shield is just absolutely lovely. With work and paint, this can be a beautiful kit, as I intend. This is a out-of-the-box build with no modifications whatsoever. Sadly though, as awesome as this kit is, and as excited as I was to buy it as it just was released, and sat on him for a few years, out of the box he does look shit and needs a bit of painting. I racked up all the pieces on the paint stands as so, sorted out the colours. All the work for a competition, especially an out-of-the-box one, needs to be done in the paintwork, so that's where all my focus has been, and the pieces have been highly divided, regardless being a single or two-toned coloured kit. I will explain the full process of how this kit did come to its finished product, so bit of a long video, do apologise, but it is requested of the audience. The primer used, as always, Tamir grey lacquer primer out of the bottle and airbrushed across the kit all over. Some small pieces that are going full metallic, received outclad pre-gloss black undercoat primer. Majority of the paint are going to be acrylic. The effect I'm going for is salt weathering and paint chipping, exposing many layers of paint throughout this kit, being a scrap build. The originality of the cockpit would have been from the 1 year war, and various parts rebuilt and repainted from all sorts of wars. Anyone really into their Gundam series will be able to recognise them from the colours. I'm using the famous salt weather hairspray chipping technique. You put a layer of paint, spray the piece with hairspray, sprinkle salt, and once the hairspray dries, you add a layer of paint. There is a tutorial on this channel describing this process. Normally I'll have a rust or a silver underneath and put a single coat. For the first time I did multiple coats up to 3 layers thick, and then sealed it in a gloss enamel to protect the weaker layers in between each other. On the final coats, I did pre-shading. This is highlighting any detail and the edges in black paint, colouring in the middle with a lighter colour, and shading on top. Extra masking techniques have been employed, including masking tape and liquid mask, to get some different colour shades on different surfaces, including the chest plate and the large leg fuel tanks. At this stage, I'm about to remove all the salt effect to see what it looks like for the first time. This was nerve-wracking, but very rewarding, though everything does still look very clean. So there was a bit of weathering, shading, pigment weathering, inking, the whole kit and caboodle. As much weathering I could get done onto it, plus further masking and small touch-up painting on other areas. Some of the areas were candy coated, smoke coated, and one bit masked off, and then multiple layered again with more salt weathering technique. To give this a dirty and filthy look as possible, I took a realistic approach on the vernier thrusters and main rocket engines. Painted the inside with a rusted burnt iron effect, and the outside with various matte blacks and soot colours. A tutorial has very recently been posted up before this video on such techniques. As my dream weathering job starts to come together, there's some panels and whatnot that I airbrushed straight gradient lines on areas that I wanted defining and separating from each other. This was a bit tricky, being all freehand with an airbrush, but with my recent practices in the series Honing Your Airbrush Skills, and an absolute tonnage of hand painting small detail throughout every single small piece, we started coming to a resemblance of a finished looking model. Further finer tuning weathering techniques were employed, including pin washing. Small selection of aftermarket Bandai and custom Samuel decals and custom personal design decals were sorted out from my bits box of decals and applied throughout the kit. Had a final coat of acrylic clear enamel, and then multiple layers of clear matte Tamiya acrylic, including some slight amount of pigment weathering here and there for extra thrust effect and dirtying up the decals to give it its finished look. Some criticism, the decals aren't perfectly too dirty, but to be honest, to be truthfully honest, I cannot be more happy with this finish. I think it's one of the best paint jobs that I've done out there. Lots of practice in shading and weathering, and I think this all goes down to practicing painting those lines and just working my airbrush more, even though I'm not painting anything during the times that I'm practicing with it. Has really come out and come through. This is why I'm probably going to try to push that series more further, because it's definitely helped and protrude through my work. A little bit of a backstory on the idea that I got this. Being a scrap build mobile suit, have a look at the wiki of the Dra-C. I wanted something that's, been a case of the tractor that's lived through many lives and many coats of paint. To be a well-used mobile suit does not necessarily have to have battle damage per se. It could be sort of a patrol thing, constantly flying around, shoots a few rounds here and there. Parts could be replaced, and most importantly, sitting in a hangar for a very, very long time. So this is where you get thruster dirt marks and just scattered and scratched, worn out paints everywhere. I gave it a bit of thought of how something would weather and rust out in outer space. I added some Xeon decals from its homage of what it used to be, and a few mercenary and personalised decals that it could have been bought out by a company or private organisation or colony militia. That's the sort of idea I got behind the whole process. But most importantly, I wanted the paintwork and the paintwork alone to tell a story about the different eras and fights it would have gone through in its lifetime, the different anime series or the political regimes through the actual Gundam UC storyline. In the build itself, being a challenge set by the forum, the hardest part was not painting it. Over a period of time, anyone can do this sort of technique. All the techniques are easy, but timing it over a short period of time and getting that much work in within the month, I was able to do half an hour painting here and there in between life's woes. But timing the coats of paint and not damaging layers was the absolute trickiest part. One layer messed up and that would have thrown out the whole competition for me. The trick to doing a build like this is not really mastering anything or doing modeling for a very long time, but just the application of many techniques on top of each other, which is very time consuming, but the results seem to be rewarding. I could probably count off about 10 different techniques, which you'd normally put one or two in a model on top of each other, with some just thoughts and theories behind weathering. 90% of the techniques used on this can be found on this channel, and it was just a management of time for the short period that I had. All in all, it's worked out. I'm very happy. It's going to go further to other competitions, Bandai World Cup and the Australian Model Expo. But in the forum competition, it came first, and I was very pleased with that result. All in all, I believe that's all the information that I have on this particular build. Of course, and as always, if you have any questions or comments, I do regularly read and frequent the comment section down below. Please help yourself to that. Most everything that's covered in this video has been expanded in other videos. Feel free to use the search function on my channel to have a little perusal of the Gundam Mech Model Workshop series, including product reviews. And as always on this channel, further future content of models, tutorials, discussions will be posted here. Thank you very much for your long time support, your viewing, and we'll definitely catch you guys next time. Have a good one.